Illegal drugs, unfortunately, they have become a way of life in South Florida. The various agencies of the federal government that have been banded together to fight the illegal importation of drugs is led by what's called the Cutting Edge, the U.S. Coast Guard. For 5 days, Montage had a crew aboard a Coast Guard cutter, and the scenes you are about to see are not an adventure movie from Hollywood, but unfortunately for us, are sad, true, and real.
When Vice President Bush visits his Florida task force, there are always boats for him to see, loaded with tons of pot.
We are making an impact, and I think we're giving some hope to Miami.
The same thing happens when President Reagan drops in to see how the task force is doing. And when most of you think of a drug task force, you probably imagine the ocean filled with Coast Guard vessels, involved in nothing else but hot pursuit of smugglers. Many people think of shootouts like this, between the Colombian vessel Kone and the Coast Guard cutter Decisive. The boat was spotted in the Windward Passage between Cuba and Haiti.
We are over 2 days from Colombia. I will stop you. I will stop you.
Good shot.
I will fire at your vessel only as long as it takes to bring your vessel to stop.
Getting hit. Got smoke. Got smoke. Woo! All right!
The good guys won this round. The boat was seized by the Coast Guard and towed back to its home port in Colombia. No one was injured and several tons of pot had been confiscated. But in day-to-day battles against illegal drugs, the good guys don't always win. They don't always have the time. That's what we found out on the Coast Guard cutter Cape Gull on a 4-day patrol off the coast of South Florida.
Group Miami, Cape Gull, our Roger, position figures as follows. 25 degrees, 9 minutes west, speed of advance, 20 knots, 20.
This is another real chase. West of Bimini, headed for Miami, a speedboat is spotted about 11 o'clock one Friday night. When the patrol light flashes, the small boat turns around and takes off, reaching speeds of about 60 miles an hour.
Miami, say again your position, say again your position and speed of advance, over.
Group Miami, Cape Gull, our Roger.
The 95-foot Cape Gull was no match for the fleeting Cigarette. In less than a half hour, the boat went off the radar screen and the chase was over. Why did we lose him?
He just simply outran me. Which is not an uncommon occurrence. I brought up both my engines and I put on my blue light indicating to him that I wanted him to stop, and he picked up speed.
Did you ask for other assistance?
Yes, we did. What I'll usually do is ask for assistance, and in most cases I will get help. In this particular case, logistics problems prevented me from getting the help that I needed.
Simply put, it's a big ocean and a tough war. Not only are cutters like Cape Gull often outrun by smaller speedboats, there's just not enough Coast Guard to go around. Only 7 95-footers are assigned to the waters between Fort Pierce and Key West on a rotating schedule. Some smaller boats patrol closer to shore, and 210-footers like the Decisive patrol off Mexico and South America on missions that last 3 or 4 weeks at a time.
They threw a boarding ladder over their stern, okay?
I was scared. I was running away because I see that big something, running on top of me.
Each cutter, then, is responsible for a very large piece of ocean. But unlike the drug-busting image most people have of the Coast Guard, looking for smugglers is not the Coast Guard's priority. As you'll see, many routine responsibilities take up most of the time many people would like to think is being spent on drug hunting.
Group Miami, cutter Cape Gull, that's permanent. I was aware of that.
It's just before dawn and we're on our way to hook up with a Coast Guard helicopter to foil a scheduled airdrop of marijuana west of Great Isaac Island. It's a hookup that never took place. We were diverted to another cutter that picked up 8 Haitians in a sinking boat during the night. We're told to stand by while Immigration and Coast Guard decide what to do with the aliens. 2 hours later, we're told to continue our patrol. In the time spent waiting, we miss the scheduled airdrop of drugs.
Now y'all getting against the wind here.
real slight chance we could still be in the right area for them running across.
But it's way over sunrise now.
Well, this would be about the time they do the drop.
Do you suppose they sent air patrol out knowing that you were tied up with this?
They were going to have air support out there for us. But, like I said, that resource without us, one without the other, is not nearly as effective.
What is your nationality? Haitian?
Yes, sir.
Why are you going to Miami?
I'm going to buy some cargo.
Cargo?
Yes, sir.
And so it goes. Day in, day out, opportunities to catch smugglers are missed because other operations, like alien interdiction, are just as important. But sometimes there are smaller rewards.
2 more I can see right now, yeah. I'm sure there's several more out here somewhere.
It's early Saturday morning and we are on patrol west of Bimini. It's in the area of the airdrop missed the day before. Off the side of the boat, something shimmers in the flat water. It's a 1-pound baggie of marijuana, the first of many pounds to come.
No, that's Captain what he wants to do first. You got it hooked.
You got it.
I'd say about 80 pounds.
This was very possibly the result of an airdrop because it's so well covered in plastic as to keep it dry.
The crew worked quickly, gaffing these 50 or 60-pound bales, breaking them open and throwing the marijuana back in the water. 2 men out fishing also spotted a bale and brought it out to the cutter. The total haul, 25 bales. That's about 1,500 pounds of pot.
Street value differs, but it can be worth in the vicinity of $10,000 a bale. Yeah, we might have done some good. You know, that's half the battle. If he just doesn't get it into the country, that's what we're out here for. Although I'd sure like to catch him.
Finding the pot is not as good as finding the smuggler. And even finding the smuggler often is not the root of the problem, which usually stems from a source country like Colombia or Mexico. But the search continues. That Saturday evening, we were staked off the Bahamas, expecting a large flow of speedboats, possibly carrying drugs, would be headed for Miami later that night. Once again, our plans were scratched. Like alien interdiction, search and rescue missions also take priority over drug busts. A ship in distress had been spotted off Andros Island, about 150 miles from our position near Great Isaac. With only 1 generator working, we began what was to be a 13-hour trip to the grounded vessel, Seeker.
Morning, Captain. Can you hear me? I'll be sending over my small boat in just a few minutes.
The Cape Gull crew worked to stop flooding on the Seeker. After they plugged some holes and laid some lines, it was ready to be towed.
Hey, how does the vessel Seeker feel about going to Bimini, over?
He said he would, anywhere you take him that he can pull the boat out, he'll be happy.
Cape Gull towed Seeker to a position west of Bimini. We were pulled off that assignment, which took over 18 hours, and sent to yet another search and rescue. Someone called in saying they thought they were lost somewhere off Bimini. When we reached the destination, no boat could be found. Calls of this type are a ploy often used by drug smugglers. Get the Coast Guard to answer a call in one place, send your drug boats to Miami in another direction.
Obviously, drug smuggling has turned into a big business, and we are dealing with some people who that's their profession, and they spend whatever dollars it takes to outsmart the Coast Guard, and that takes getting equipment that is as good as or superior to that we have to work with.
This is some of the equipment smugglers are working with these days. These boats were confiscated by U.S. Customs, who is still doing most of the drug busting on the water. Displays like this, or a warehouse full of confiscated drugs, lead many to the conclusion that the task force is an overwhelming success. Some statistics, too, are impressive. These are the figures on marijuana seizures by the Coast Guard for the past 3 years. Before a task force in 1981, the Coast Guard seized 1.6 million pounds of marijuana, 126 boats, and made 582 arrests. The task force began in the spring of 1982. Figures for that year were 2.3 million pounds of pot, 146 boats, and 762 arrests. This year, 1.1 million pounds of pot has been collected so far. 97 boats have been seized, and 345 arrests have been made. So is the task force working? Well, let's say it depends on whom you ask.
Where would you say lies the real power of the Coast Guard? Is it the actual seizures made or the image that boats are out there?
I think any law enforcement agency has a deterrent effect. You talk about the marked police car along the highway that causes you to slow down. I think we have the effect. But I think our seizure figures have indicated that we have made significant impact by the actual arrests, seizures of vessels, and confiscation of both equipment and contraband.
Attorney Mark Barbakoff disagrees with the way task force statistics are interpreted. Barbakoff was with U.S. Customs for 6 years as regional counsel for the southeastern United States. He left Customs for private practice about 1 year after task force operations began.
What percentage of vessels were getting in when you started with Customs 5 or 6 years ago, and as opposed to what percentages are getting in today or when you left 6 months ago?
The percentages were exactly the same. Statistically, when I began with Customs, Customs acknowledged that they were seizing only 10 to 15% of all of the drugs coming in. When I left Customs, the same percentage, 10 to 15%, was being used as the estimate of seizure.
So then what is the loophole? Why hasn't the task force been as successful as at least headlines would make it seem to be?
The resources are not nearly enough, and notwithstanding the public impression, the government is not out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The public would perceive that there are aircraft capable of radar detection flying 24 hours a day. That cannot physically be done. The public perceives that the Coast Guard is forming a blockade of the Florida coastline. That cannot physically be done.
Everyone does agree the problem is still out there. And if these headlines tell the story, low street prices mean more drugs are available than ever before.
Who's winning?
Well, I think we're getting much better. I think it's difficult to say who's winning. I think we haven't won the war yet. I think we've made great strides. I think we've put them off balance, and we've got a long way to go yet, and I think we recognize that.
We'll be sending a boarding party over, so I'd like to check for compliance with federal regs.
It's no fault of the Coast Guard or any other agency that drugs are still with us. It's important to realize the massive problem these agents, most of them dedicated, are up against. As long as the demand is there, so will be the supply. And you, South Florida, are not getting the protection you think you are.
If you can even stop 2% or 3%, it's some kind of progress anyway.